Hi, we're back with Valley Talks Extra episode right here from DocuSign in San Francisco, and I'm so excited for today's talk. I feel like many people in our audience may relate a lot to today's topic, and I cannot wait to introduce you to my today's guest. We all know that Silicon Valley is home for the biggest tech companies in the world like Facebook, Google, Netflix, Apple, and it's home to hundreds, if not thousands, of the most innovative startups. This may make everyone think that Silicon Valley is this wonderland with access to endless exciting job opportunities. While in a way this is true, it's not actually that super easy to land the job of your dreams here. Today, I'm sitting down with Jacob Warwick, the badass career and executive coach who has helped professionals land leadership roles in companies like Google, Facebook, Zendesk, Microsoft, IBM, and many others. He started Discover Podium, a career advancement platform for managers and leaders. Jacob will help us understand some of the realities of a job search and share the best strategies for career advancement in such a competitive and dynamic market. Jacob, welcome to Valley Talks.
Sylvia, so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure, and so I'm so excited to have you today because the topic I think has quite some of the controversy, I feel, because the world thinks that Silicon Valley is this, dreamland where money lies on the street and, companies fight for employees. They add more and more awesome perks, while actually in reality, it takes anywhere from three to 9 months for, a really skilled professional to land a job they love or even enjoy over here. So why do you think is that?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, money can seem to line the streets. But what a lot of folks don't understand is the cost of living here is quite high.
Right. So you want to be picking a lot of the...
Yeah, from an outside perspective, $150,000 salaries is, certainly nothing to scoff at. And while that is a first world problem for a lot of us, it's frustrating in the Valley when you're looking at one-bedroom apartments just across the street here, and not a lot of room for your family, and it's $4,500 a month.
Definitely.
It becomes very stressful.
Yeah.
In order to really elevate your career to maybe that director, maybe VP status, where you're starting to make that upper six figures and higher, $250,000 salaries, you really have to really dedicate a lot of your life to your career. And in a lot of ways, we can become trapped by our jobs because if we're out of work, we're scared to go find other work. Word gets around pretty quickly, and you'll run out of money really quickly as well.
Yeah. So why do you think it's actually taking so much time here to land a good job where there are so many opportunities, you would think, and so many awesome companies here in San Francisco? Like, why? Where is this discrepancy really?
I think the discrepancy is, a lot of us are doing things that maybe we don't enjoy.
Right.
So when you really take a look at it and you start to go look for a job, you think, say you're a director of marketing, you think the next logical step for you would be VP of marketing or, whatever that looks like. Maybe you want to work at a startup environment where it's really fun and like a fast-paced environment, but you've always worked at a very large organization where things move a little slower. It's very difficult to understand what you really want. And when you're not following your passion, it's very easy to just put it off.
Right.
To not log on to LinkedIn after you work 12 hours a day and send a bunch of recruiters emails or try to reach out to your friends and ask for advice. Yeah. It's also a very isolating experience. It's a soul-searching experience to know what is your calling in life.
Yeah, and it feels also very competitive here, right? So not only there are many companies and opportunities, but also pretty much the whole world wants to work here, wants to be here.
Anyone
right?
in a job search will feel like that no matter what. You put an application in for DocuSign or any companies over here that are very popular, and you're immediately competing with 500 other people. On the other end, the hiring managers have to sift through all that as well.
Yeah.
And kind of dig in deep and try to figure out, who's the best candidate for this position, what's going to happen. And if you put yourself out there and maybe you're exceptionally qualified and you go after, say, 20 jobs and you only hear back from one, it's going to start to weigh on you. And really, I think some of the challenges in the Valley are, finding what you're good at and finding what you're passionate about, but then understanding how to battle the emotional challenges and some of the psychological things that you have to do to get through that, to dust your shoes off and kind of pick yourself up after you've been rejected so many times. it really starts to weigh on you.
Yeah, and what is your opinion on the unemployment rate here? It's between 2 to 3%. It's very, very low. People think that, that's why it's so easy to get a great job.
Yeah, it's not so much that you can't get a job. It's, can you get a job that you're happy with? And unemployment is fine, but underemployment is also a problem. And some of us are, in your first 5-10 years of your career, you might be at $60,000, $70,000 a year. And again, from the outside, that's a very livable wage. Where our company is headquartered in Reno, that's a great cost of living. Like, you can enjoy your life, you can have property, you can buy a home. In Silicon Valley, it just doesn't cut it. It's frustrating.
Right.
And it's kind of a deception. There's kind of a mask, if you would, over the industry that, well, it looks sexy on paper. In reality, as you live through it, it starts to settle in on you, and it becomes very frustrating.
It's a battle, becomes a battle.
It always is, absolutely.
Really. All right, so let's say, a director at a large Silicon Valley company feels like they need a change, maybe they want to switch the culture, or maybe they want to advance their career. For whatever reason, they want to go further. But also they are super busy, because as you said, they have so much to do in such a small time period. So, it feels hard because what do? They go to job boards, they are looking at what's out there, if they only can, in their free time.
If they're even posted, right?
Definitely.
Particularly some of the senior executives we work with, that's one of their challenges. The companies I want to work for, they don't share that information. I need to be found. I need someone somewhere to come and knock on my door and say, here's the offer you're looking for, exactly what you need.
Yeah.
And I don't know about your life, but a lot of things don't come that easily.
Yeah.
So it can be frustrating. And the way it used to work, particularly in other cities, Silicon Valley's really changed it, particularly with the online world and the search kind of components of it, where previously, it was very network driven, and you had to, shake the right hands and kiss the right babies, and know whatever it is you got to do to get yourself out there. That's how it used to be driven, and to a degree, that's still possible. But it started to feel like we got to do it all online now. We got to sift through robots that are rejecting me, and then when you deal with all these rejections, you start to wonder, is it because I'm too old? Is it because I'm too young?
Right, because you're so experienced. You're doing this amazing job right now. And suddenly you feel like no one is interested in you, right?
Well, and you have your head down working, maybe paying a mortgage for your family,
right?
And you're scared to go put yourself out there because we have the illusion of comfort in our careers. And even though you want more, you have to put that extra effort in to get there. And obviously it's a lot of work, and nobody actually wants to sit around on LinkedIn for 10 hours a day. Don't tell my employees that. But nobody actually wants to do that. And it's frustrating. But my maybe contrarian point of that is, what is your sanity and your passion worth to you? And what are you willing to do to find a more fulfilling life and find a more fulfilling career, that when you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get ready to get on BART, take your half-hour commute into the city, or maybe hour and a half if you're in the South Bay, things like that. What's going to actually make it so when you wake up in the morning, you're excited to get up, you're excited to live your life, you're excited to make breakfast for your kids, kiss your spouse, get into work and have a smile on your face. You're going to work 12 hours anyways in the Valley.
Right.
So you might as well be doing something that you really enjoy.
Yeah, so it's definitely important to think about that, which actually not many people really do, I feel. We go, day by day and grab whatever opportunities come across, or find something that is within our reach, while it's really important to think long term and look deeply into our souls. So you mentioned about all of this on a very high level, but what would be some of the action points for someone who realizes this is the moment, I want to think about a change? What should they do?
Yeah, so my background's been in marketing myself. I know we kind of share some of that. I think about, or I ask clientele or anyone thinking about making that change to think about themselves kind of as a product. And how would you bring that product or represent that product to market, which I think a lot of folks in Silicon Valley understand.
Yeah, that's a really, really exciting perspective.
It is, but again, it's kind of underwhelming to be like, I'm a product, cool, that's, somebody's gonna buy me. It doesn't feel good. But you think about, all right, what's the strategy behind it? What is it that I need to present to the world so that I'm going to be selected by the right audience, in this case, an employer, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's starting your own business or things like that. But how do I present myself in that way? And it always boils down to, a couple different channels that seem to be very effective for folks, their resume, their LinkedIn profiles, for you, a portfolio, things like that, that really showcase what you've done. So I always ask people to kind of come back to ground zero. Like, what is it that you want to do? Answer those very high level, kind of boring questions, not groundbreaking anybody, but understanding what's going to make me fulfilled, and how do I present myself to the world now? What's the perception that they get from me? Are they getting the perception that I'm this big wig executive that's only knows marketing? And if I want to do, let's say, design, how do I shift that perception? How do I change the way that looks so that I could be more attractive to that audience?
So really building the personal brand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So personal branding is obviously a sexy buzzword in a lot of ways, and it's also, again, it doesn't feel good personally.
Well, maybe I'm used to it. I don't know.
You're definitely. I mean, in the
I don't
Valley.
know why.
Yeah, I don't know why. In the Valley, we definitely start to get buzzwordy on things like, well, my personal brand and my LinkedIn, and it becomes a little bit like, we know what it means, but we forget how to execute on it or how to live by that. And it feels icky to be a product. Like, some people want to keep their head down, work a 9 to 5 and provide for their family, and that's the life they want. They don't want to climb that structure. They don't have to think that detailed in it. But for those wanting to make a change or do something different or explore different opportunities in their life, it's a whole restructuring and way to like kind of look at yourself and like what's next.
Definitely, and that's applicable to Silicon Valley, San Francisco, but pretty much anywhere else.
It is. Things just feel to be exasperated here in the Valley. Things happen very quickly. Expectations are exceptionally high, especially when a VC comes in and dumps $50 million into a company and like, oh, we got to grow really quickly. We got to do this. And we build this sense of urgency in our lives that we have to get there very quickly, and we have to grow, and we have to bring a product to market, and we have to, I want to work at the next Google or the next Facebook or something like that. I want that, whatever that feeling is we think we get from having done that. And then in reality, after we've done it, it's like, oh, okay. You had all this sense of urgency behind it, and now it's like when you come home at the end of the day, is like, was that something that I was really interested in, or did it just sound good to society because I worked at Google and that was really cool?
Yeah, that's true.
Now, that's a tough question to ask, especially it might be,
right.
contrarian approach in the Valley. Like, maybe that's not for everyone.
Especially when you live here. But I mean, there are so many other exciting brands and startups that, that you can grow so quickly with.
Absolutely.
That's just another huge value. All right, so let's also kind of think about founders for a moment,
Oh, founders.
Because I know quite a few founders, and we all know that 90% of startups actually fail. So the truth is, many of those founders, gotta look at what's next.
Absolutely.
And so, do you work with some of them, and what have you observed have been some of the challenges that they faced?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the challenges for founders is, a lot of times when you're the CEO or founder of a company, you have to very quickly become a jack of all trades. Marketing needs help, you're a marketing guy.
Right.
Or gal, right?
Definitely.
Sales needs help.
Yeah.
All you do is sales. Customer, whatever. You do so much of everything to keep the ship afloat and to keep things running that when you go to search for a job, you go,
I've done it all.
Am I a VP of marketing?
Yeah.
Am I an operations person? I'm just a leader, right? I'm a leader. And then from the hiring manager perspective, it's like, this person was their own boss. How are they going to work well?
Yeah, that's actually a bummer, that oftentimes people at big companies do not know how to value that experience. Do you think the same?
Some companies really embrace it. Some companies say, I want you to be a self-starter. I want that entrepreneurial mindset. I want that. And then other companies just want you to kind of dot the I's, cross the T's, and be another cog in the wheel. And for founders particularly, as a hiring manager, you know deep down that they don't want to fail. They never wanted to fail in their own endeavors. So you know that they're never quite going to be happy in that next role. And so you always have to battle that perception. Now, there could be other reasons like, man, I really don't want to work 110 hours a week anymore. Maybe I just want to work 60 like everyone else and spend time with my family. And that's we've had that conversation. We've worked with C-level clients that have 80, 100 employees in their company, and they're looking for work.
Yeah.
And they can't talk to anyone about it. It's not like,
right.
Hey, board of directors, I'm looking for work. If any of that word gets out, it can absolutely
heard?
jeopardize their career. Yeah.
Right, and so they cannot even leverage their network. That's the challenge too.
You feel handcuffed. It's very difficult. It's an isolating experience. Not everyone knows what you're going through. Not everyone knows the challenges and stressors that you face for a majority of your life at this point. If you are in that 100-hour work week kind of component, and then feeling trapped is just icing on the cake.
But then also you need to decide who you want to be positioned as, right? It's kind of hard to be targeting all of those different segments or verticals or different professions.
And really the
at the same time.
I think the thing that a lot of founders get trapped into is they don't understand how long it's going to take.
Yeah.
It's not like you can just quit your company and find a job right off the bat, especially when you're, maybe you're a founder making $250,000 a year, maybe you're struggling at, 20 or 30,000, just doing whatever it can to keep the ship afloat. In order to know what's best for you, it's best to have some ideas to bounce off of others and then weigh the pros and cons of that and then start to think, okay, maybe I do want to hand this off. I have 12 months in the tank where I'm not going to struggle, which is obviously a great problem to have.
Yeah.
And I can take my time to find what I'm going to find valuable next and position myself accordingly. Did
you also notice that people who were high level in small companies struggled with applying for jobs that would where the title would be actually lower than what they were holding before? Well, almost any founder is going to have a title lower than what they had before. But I understand the question here. If you're at a small company, say you're maybe not even a founder, maybe this is more applicable to some of the other audience, but maybe you're a VP at a tech startup with 40 employees. That doesn't equate to a VP at a Zendesk or at a Microsoft or something like that. It's definitely not apples to apples. So understanding your perception and how that's going to change is very difficult. I've always found it easier to understand what your compensation requirements are because that will help with the leveling. Understanding what a director at a certain size company is going to make compensation-wise, what the bonus structure looks like, those kinds of things will help determine about where you're at in your career, say $200,000 a year, director level, that will equate to maybe a VP at a smaller company. Maybe it's a senior manager at a larger company. So that's one of the challenges that you have to deal with. You're never going to have an apples to apples comparison. And ultimately, none of that matters. You could have been making $30,000, $40,000 in one job and then $200,000 in the next. Yeah. I've seen it happen in the Valley, been part of that wave myself. It's about perception. And at the end of the day, you can either do the job or you can't. So if you build the perception and the confidence that you can do that job and then you back it up with results, it doesn't matter. Fair. Just to make it blunt, right? No, that's a really great perspective and point of view. It's a little fake it till you make it sometimes, which will bite you in the butt here and there. But I found that sometimes you have to reach a couple rungs up on the ladder to realize that maybe you need to take a step back and really settle into your career. You'll see a lot of that in the Valley. A lot of 8-month time periods at startups, 6 months here. I think the average tenure for a senior marketing manager or VP in the Valley is a year and 10 months. So it's not long, and you're already looking for work again. Obviously, that creates more urgency and anxiety around your job search and your career as well. So lots of things to consider. You mentioned that you have a marketing background, and actually where did the passion for career advancement and coaching come from? Yeah, so I had a marketing background because I didn't want to do marketing, but I felt that when you become good at marketing, you understand how to be really passionate about bringing something and telling a story. I really had a journalist background in high school. Didn't end up going to college, but took that journalism background into writing careers that evolved into marketing and then obviously turned into ad copy because that's what people would pay for. So I kind of was dangled the carrot of, you're going to be in marketing, you tell stories, you do all this content writing now. And it turned into telling stories for people. And what I found was, while I absolutely have enjoyed some really big campaigns, I found it more fulfilling to help an individual make an impact in their life than helping Salesforce make a couple million more dollars on a campaign. For me, that was where my passion lay. Now, there's obviously some benefits to that, like having a team of 15 or 20 folks that you work with that can take a cool product to market and do that. Like, there's definite pros to that. But when I can sit down and help a single mom who's been out of work for 6 months go into a Fortune 500 for the first time in a very competitive environment such as Silicon Valley, and also get a raise in the process
from like 180 to 225,000, and now she can send her daughter to college. Like the impact there, that's true passion. Like there's passion in that. And there's obviously pros and cons to everything you do, but that's really where it came from. Like having friends come to my wedding a couple weeks ago that we helped find work. Like that's a real connection. That's a real relationship that you've developed, and something that can likely expand throughout your career. And I don't remember all the folks that I worked with campaigns on over the years, but that's where the passion came from, really.
Definitely. It sounds like being very fulfilling.
It is, and it's relationship building, and it tells the story of your life, and that's the story that I'd like to carry on and keep striving for.
For sure, and that's why I was actually really amazed by your approach, which I found quite unique, I must say, which is thinking about yourself in a career advancement as a product, but also applying that marketing experience to it and perspective to it and context, right? And how do you want to be perceived so that others are actually fighting for you instead of you're fighting for the role. So I find it really unique, and it's nice to hear that it works.
It absolutely can, for sure.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a different amount of time for different folks. In some cases, you can find a new role in 6 weeks, and sometimes it's 6 months, and everyone works at their different paces.
Definitely. So in practice, when someone reaches out to you and your team, like in short, how does the help look like?
Really, we like to start with like advisory, like understanding, and really want to focus on listening first, and listening to make sure that the types of services that we provide can actually make an impact. In a lot of cases, even if you feel absolutely excited about how you're positioned, there are tweaks that you can make. There are different ways to think about it. Going through the process in itself of answering questions like, what am I fulfilled about? Even from a high level, that is helping us tell a better story and understand you. We believe that more than just spitting out a resume, nice clean piece of paper, and sending it to 100 people and seeing what happens.
Yeah.
You want to be very mindful about it.
I mean, it's such a relief to know that there is such an, action-oriented, practical help that people can have, and not only in order to find a job that they love, but also to negotiate for higher salaries, huh? So
absolutely, that's probably my favorite part of the job.
Okay.
Is once somebody's like, I have this offer, like, how do I get more? It's like, well, first of all, cool, congratulations. Let's see, understand the circumstances. What knowledge did you pick up during the process? Like where your values are, like what their situation. There's a lot of details, but that's where it starts to get really fun, because you already know that you're wanted. So for a lot of our clients, once they've gotten the offer, they're just excited to finally be over the, like somebody does want me. Like, in some cases, particularly on long searches, if after 8 months, you finally get an offer, you're like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah,
like,
and now
the fun part starts.
How do I get most of it?
We try to come up with pragmatic, objective ways to go for what you're worth, because we actually have the data, like, this job typically pays $260,000 a year. The colleagues do. We actually have clients that make that. We obviously wouldn't say who the clients were,
right?
But they offered you $210. And let's try to dive into why. Let's try to figure out, like,
that's
what
awesome.
Those kind of pieces are. And in one way, we can help battle ageism or sexism or things like that, just by being objective and trying to use the data to do the talking, and use your skills. Use your skills to do the talking, what you've done and what you can accomplish. Those are all of the details that we kind of go over from a very, very high level, obviously.
Yeah, but then, only a few hours, let's say, of work and kind of discussion around it can earn you quite a few dozens of thousands of dollars.
Sometimes very much. I think the best, early in my career, I was doing $200 an hour, which is a lot. I mean, that's a good chunk of change for an hour of work. And I booked 2 hours of coaching with a client who had an offer. And in those 2 hours, we made $40,000 in headway and a $20,000 increase in signing bonus I actually didn't do any coaching. I just wrote the response email for the compensation negotiation.
Quite a valuable
And she
response.
turned and she's like kind of scared. She's like, whoa, that was really aggressive. And I said, well, let's see what happens. Worst thing they say is no, and you just accept the offer anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. You just kind of poke it. And they compromised a little bit. We got all this extra money, and I was like, wow, that was the best ROI I've ever had.
Oh, for sure.
Now, those results aren't always typical. Like, you always want to be pragmatic with it, but that's why it can be fun. Like, that's something very exciting when you see and hear somebody's excitement in their voice. when they can finally like let all that stress off their shoulders and they can go to their spouse and be like, I got a job, like stop giving me a hard time about looking for work, whatever those emotional drivers are, like that excitement is where the passion comes from. Absolutely.
That's awesome. So what's the best way for everyone to reach out to Discover Podium?
LinkedIn, always.
Okay.
But we have discoverpodium.com, pretty straightforward, but we have about 20 employees right now and we're absolutely on LinkedIn 24/7. So anyone that you catch on LinkedIn is a very straightforward approach, and we can see real quickly how you brand yourselves.
Yeah, so, for sure, and
absolutely.
It's definitely worth it. So we encourage everyone to go check out discoverpodium.com.
Yes.
All right, thanks.